There were lots of times when I had lots of brain fog. I was essentially trying to explain something, and then mid-sentence, I literally forgot what I was saying. So it felt like I was going crazy. In addition to a bunch of other things, there's some dissociation, some derealization. You feel like you're living in a dream or you're living in this other dimension. And I have a lot of experience dealing with this, but today I no longer deal with it. It's not an issue for me. I can think pretty clearly, but there was a time when I could barely string a sentence together. How's it going, guys? Miguel here from CFS Recovery. This channel is dedicated to helping people recover from chronic fatigue syndrome and all the other strange symptoms that come along with it. I was sick for about 4.5 years, and luckily I met a doctor who taught me all these things. So now I teach other people all around the world how to recover. So in this video, I want to talk about brain fog and CFS, or chronic fatigue syndrome. Brain fog is one of the main symptoms of a hypersensitive nervous system. A lot of you might be wondering, do I have CFS? Because I have some brain fog. I don't even know if it's real brain fog. It just feels like I can't think clearly. And most of all, how do we fix it? So first of all, brain fog, it essentially feels like you're in a never-ending daydream. And there's a really great comment, I think it was a perfect description that sums it all up, that one of the subscribers left. I'll pop it up right here. Brain fog essentially feels like a never-ending daydream, that you feel like you're zoned out. You know how when you're looking at something and then you zone out and it's hard to peel your eyes off of whatever you're looking at? Say you're looking at a wall, you get really fixated on it, one spot on the wall, and it's hard to look away. That's what brain fog is. You can't think straight. Memory loss, short-term memory, inability to comprehend simple ideas or simple topics, or inability to keep up with a conversation. There were lots of times when I had lots of brain fog. I was essentially trying to explain something, and then mid-sentence, I literally forgot what I was saying. So it felt like I was going crazy. In addition to a bunch of other things, there's some dissociation, some derealization. You feel like you're living in a dream or you're living in this other dimension. And I have a lot of experience dealing with this, but today I no longer deal with it. It's not an issue for me. I can think pretty clearly. But there was a time when I could barely string a sentence together, and I had some severe brain fog. Before I got really sick with CFS, before I was bedridden, the brain fog started happening first. And that's actually one of the first symptoms that I had without even realizing I had CFS or I had a hypersensitive nervous system. I had a lot of anxiety, but at the same time, I also had lots of brain fog. Like I couldn't think straight. And also my thinking was just clouded. I felt like I was in this other dimension. So there were times when I was sleeping and I wouldn't sleep much because I was just working a busy job. I was in university. I was also trying to keep up working out. I was running off of energy drinks and supplements, and I would go to sleep. And when I would wake up after about 4 or 5 hours, because I didn't really give myself that much time to sleep, to be honest, I was burning the candle on both ends. But when I would wake up, it didn't feel like my brain woke up. Physically, I was awake, but my brain felt like it was asleep. Like I would go to the washroom, and as I'm standing there, it felt like I was moving on a boat, and it felt like I was in a dream, but physically I was awake. So it's kind of hard to describe it. Things didn't feel real. It literally felt like I was in a different dimension. And I would go to university, go to class, I would work out, exercise, do all those things, but it felt like there was some kind of barrier between me and everything else around me. And I didn't realize it, but at the time, that was my brain essentially screaming out to me, we can't handle any more mental stress, mental capacity. So my perspective on brain fog, essentially we have these different buckets of stress capacity in our body. We have like the mental threshold, we have the emotional threshold, and then the physical threshold. Most people who get CFS, not all of them, but most of them are overthinkers, overachievers, overanalyzers. Mentally, their brain is running constantly. It's always analyzing, always doing mental calculations of different scenarios that can play out, and a lot of times it can drive us crazy. So for me, that was definitely the case. My mental capacity was completely maxed out. So say this is my mental capacity, I was about here. And then once it started to spill over, that's when I started seeing more and more glimpses of this brain fog. So essentially my brain was saying, look, we cannot handle any more capacity for mental functioning. We can't handle any more capacity for overthinking. So it literally tunes out, it just zones out. It doesn't want to think because it's been thinking too much, too hard for too long. And so it shuts off that thinking mode. So now you're just, you find that when you have brain fog, it's really hard to think. So you essentially go from this overthinker, overanalyzer, to not even being able to think. It swings in the complete opposite direction. And that's something I find so often when people do get hit hard with CFS. They go from this major overthinker to not being able to think like the simplest of things. But even that, not being able to think how they used to, that stresses them out, which leads to even more hypersensitivity of the nervous system. So then you start to dissociate. Your brain kind of checks out mentally. It's like, okay, too much thought, too much thinking, you're putting me under too much stress. I'm just gonna back off and go into autopilot mode. What it is, at least that's what I found. I was in autopilot mode and my brain did not want to engage in any mental activity. So even something like trying to read a book or trying to plan out what I was gonna do the following week, I had a hard time doing it. Like, it just didn't make sense. I could look at numbers on a paper and I could do basic math and easy things that are black and white. But when it came to like making decisions and all of these thoughts, it was really difficult for me because the nervous system was just completely checked out. The brain and the nervous system, they're essentially the same. They are completely linked. The brain is the driver of the nervous system, and sometimes it just checks out when it reaches its limits. So in terms of mental capacity, when that is completely maxed out, when we go over that threshold, that's when you start to get things like brain fog, which can then lead to other things. Typically, it puts a lot of stress on the nervous system physically as well, because people tend to stay up late, they can't sleep, they're not getting enough rest, their body's always hyperstimulated, so then they end up being really fatigued as well, which then leads to other things. The more you fill up these buckets and thresholds for stress, whether mental, emotional, or physical, or any other things, you start to feel more symptoms. And your body is essentially triggering all these things to tell you, hey, we cannot do any more of that. We are breaking down. You need to slow down. You need to stop. You need to do the opposite of what you're doing. Whether it's eating too much junk food, you're gonna feel physically sick. Your gut will start to go out of balance. Maybe emotionally, you can't handle certain things. Maybe even watching a Disney movie will literally bring tears to your eyes. That actually happened to me. I watched Moana. I mentioned this in another video. I watched Moana and then I had tears coming down my eyes by the end of the movie because I was so emotional. That bucket was already completely filled because I was so emotional about like losing my job and my car. It felt like I had basically lost my lifestyle. I lost who I was as a person because I was completely bedridden, lost everything. So I was very emotional. So the smallest thing would put me over that edge and I'd have tears streaming down my face, even from a Disney movie. Same thing with thinking. I had tons of brain fog. But a solution for that is essentially putting all of these symptoms under that main umbrella of a hypersensitive nervous system. Whether it's brain fog, whether it's fatigue, whether it's IBS and POTS symptoms, all of these different things, chronic pain, you can pretty much put them under the same bucket, that same umbrella of a hypersensitive nervous system. And if you just focus on treating the one problem, which is a hypersensitive nervous system, versus treating 20 different problems, the brain fog will go away. It will get fixed. It won't happen overnight, but it will get better and you'll start to think more clear. You'll start to be able to articulate your words better. You'll have sharper memory recall, and these things will start to function normally again. But you can't just go after the brain fog, just like you can't go after any other symptoms individually. For example, like IBS, can you do stuff that will help it? Yes, you can take some supplements, you can take probiotics, which will help, but that is just one of the many problems within that hypersensitive nervous system issue. So with the nervous system, it comes with a package of symptoms, not just one or two, it's usually a host of them. And that's probably why you're watching this channel right now, because it's so confusing and doctors can't figure out what's going on. They're telling you you're normal, your tests are coming back fine. But if everything checks out through your scans, through your blood tests, through the assessments that the doctors are doing, if everything checks out, and you just have a hypersensitive nervous system issue, and we just have to fix that. We have to shift you more into a parasympathetic state from a sympathetic state, more into rest and digest versus fight or flight or freeze mode, or the survival mode that your body's been in because it's been under stress for too long. So that's all I wanted to say about brain fog. It does go away. If you do have brain fog, if you're experiencing it, then make sure to watch these videos because these will explain a lot of the symptoms that you're feeling in addition to the brain fog. But if you are feeling that way, it doesn't matter where it came from, whether it was Lyme's, mold toxicity, long COVID, if you overworked yourself, if you had supplements, if something happened one time that caused you to go over the edge and your life was never the same after, it's the same thing. Usually what causes people to get into this illness is not what keeps them there. What causes them to get into this illness is an overload of stress. But even when we take that stress away, they're still stuck there because now the stress is no longer from that initial trigger. The stress is from what's going on in me. I feel like I'm gonna die every day. I don't know if I'm ever gonna get better. Will I ever get my life back? Those are the things that keep the stress loop open, and it keeps that loop going. So in terms of brain fog, focus on fixing the nervous system as a whole, and I break it down in tons of my videos on this channel. I think this is one of the best videos you can watch on my channel where I break down basically everything that's going on. But if you did need some help with this, then you can apply for the Recovery Jumpstart program. I help people with this because it's one thing knowing all of this stuff, but it's another thing implementing the strategies when you are in a crisis, or I call it an adjustment period. When the symptoms hit, then it brings with it tons of emotions as well. This is much more than just a physical illness. It's definitely a mental one as well, an emotional. I found the emotions to be actually harder than the physical symptoms. Not to say that the physical symptoms are a walk in the park, but there's much more to this illness than the eye can see, as you already know. So if you've had brain fog and you've had multiple tests where nothing is showing up and you seem to be perfectly normal according to the doctors, then it's highly likely you just have a hypersensitive nervous system issue. And that's essentially what chronic fatigue syndrome is. They call it chronic fatigue syndrome, and that's what it's widely known as, but it's a lot more than just fatigue. Typically there's a handful of other symptoms that are going on with things like heart palpitations, POT symptoms, high blood pressure, low blood pressure, chronic pain, all of those things. And I have different videos to break those topics down as well. But if you did enjoy this video, if this answered your question about what's going on and why you have the brain fog and what you can do to fix it, then make sure to leave a comment down below. I do subscriber comment shoutouts every single week, every single video. So if you want a chance to be featured, just comment down below. This week's comment is from iDragonfly. She says, I don't know if what I have would be classified as brain fog, but I feel like I'm in a never-ending daydream. Sometimes it's so severe that I feel unreal. In some ways, it's more upsetting to me than the physical fatigue. And that's what inspired me to make this specific video. So shout out to iDragonfly. I believe she's from Hawaii, which is one of my favorite places on the planet. Can't wait to go there again. But if you did like this video, make sure to hit the thumbs up button. Also hit that subscribe button and notification bell. That way you don't miss any of these videos. I literally post every single day. I post a lot of reminders to just help you stay on track. And always remember, you are just one mind shift away from living a life with thriving health. I'll see you in the next video.